The room was supposed to be filled with joy-soft laughter, pastel balloons, and the sweet scent of baby powder. But as my mother's voice sliced through the chatter like a blade, I realized this wasn't going to be just another family gathering. It was the day I finally stopped being the punchline. The baby shower had all the trappings of perfection: champagne flutes clinking, laughter bubbling beneath the surface, and gifts wrapped in ribbons that matched the theme. But the warmth never reached me. Not when my own mother leaned back in her chair and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's jealous because no man would stay with her." Laughter followed. Not cruel, not intentional, but it stung all the same. I kept my grip tight on my glass, knuckles white, heart pounding. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I lifted the glass to my lips and swallowed hard, pretending her words hadn't just shattered something inside me. Then the front door opened. Everyone turned, and there he was, Daniel, tall, composed, his presence commanding silence the moment he stepped into the room. In his arms was a bouquet so vibrant it seemed to glow against the muted tones of the party. He didn't pause, didn't acknowledge the stunned faces or whispered comments. He came straight to me. "For you," he murmured, placing the flowers in my arms before pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. His voice was soft but carried across the room like a promise. "You deserve more than this." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's smug smile faltered. The guests exchanged uneasy glances. And for the first time in years, I felt seen, not as the family joke, but as someone worth defending. I looked around the room, taking in the faces I'd known my entire life. Some wore guilt, others shock. A few even looked ashamed. My mother sat frozen, her usual confidence cracking at the edges. That's when I found my voice. "I've spent years swallowing your cruelty," I said, my voice steady, stronger than I'd ever dared speak in this house. "But I'm done pretending your words don't hurt. I'm done letting you turn me into the villain of your story." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My sister shifted uncomfortably. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but Daniel cut her off with a calm, controlled tone that silenced the room. "I didn't want to say anything today," he began, "but I've watched my wife walk into rooms like this one only to be humiliated, mocked, treated like she's less. Do you realize how much strength it takes to keep showing up here?" His words landed like punches, and for once, no one laughed. "You told everyone no man would stay with her," he continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "But I'm here, and I'm not just staying. I'm building a life with her. A life filled with more loyalty, kindness, and resilience than anything in this room." The hush that followed was suffocating. My mother tried to recover, her laugh cold and bitter. "You think a speech changes anything?" "No," I said, stepping forward, "but truth does." And then I said the words I'd been holding back for years. "You've spent years making me small so you could feel big. Years turning me into the cautionary tale at family dinners. But you never stopped to ask yourself why I stopped trying to prove anything to you." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Because I realized something. Love shouldn't come with conditions. And I've spent long enough chasing approval from someone who never had any to give. Daniel squeezed my hand, his presence steady beside me. "What's remarkable isn't that she survived all these years, it's that she's stronger than all of you combined." The room erupted in whispers. My aunt tried to smooth things over. My sister looked stunned. And my mother, she sat stiff, her pride unraveling before everyone's eyes. But I wasn't finished. "All my life, you told me I was nothing," I said, my voice ringing clear. "But here's the truth, Mom. I'm more than the label you slapped on me. I'm a wife. I'm a partner. I'm a woman who built a life on her own terms with a man who chose me not because he had to, but because he wanted to." Her face paled. The guests shifted uncomfortably. And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink beneath their stares. I thought about all the times I'd been called too sensitive, too emotional, too much. About how every achievement was overshadowed by my sister's success. How every failure was magnified and used as proof that I'd never amount to anything. About the nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering what was wrong with me. But standing there, with Daniel's hand in mine, I realized something profound. The problem had never been me. It was the toxic environment I'd been forced to grow up in. The constant comparisons, the emotional manipulation, the way love was always conditional, always tied to performance. "You needed me to stay broken so you could stay powerful," I said, the words flowing now like a river that had finally broken its dam. But I'm not broken anymore. I'm not the scared little girl who used to hide in the bathroom to avoid your cutting remarks. I'm not the young woman who apologized for existing. I'm someone who's learned to love herself, even when you couldn't. My sister's eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across her face, recognition, maybe even regret. She'd always been the golden child, but perhaps for the first time, she was seeing the cost of that pedestal. You think I don't know what you've done? I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. You think I haven't noticed how you've pitted us against each other, how you've made everything about what she has that I don't. But here's what you failed to understand: you were never raising two daughters. You were raising one perfect child, and one disappointment. And that was never about us. It was about you. The silence stretched, thick and heavy with unspoken truths. My mother's lips trembled as she tried to form words, but nothing came out. The woman who had always been so quick with a cutting remark, so skilled at making others feel small, suddenly found herself without ammunition. Daniel leaned closer, his voice carrying just enough authority to command respect without raising his tone. You've all seen how she's been treated, and you stayed silent. But silence makes you part of it. If you ever truly loved her, it's time you showed it, not in whispers after the fact, but now when it matters. His words hit like a revelation. I watched as several relatives looked down at their hands, shame flooding their faces. Others met my eyes for the first time that day with something that looked remarkably like respect. My aunt cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the afternoon had taken. Well, this is all very intense. Maybe we should just know, I said firmly. We shouldn't just sweep this under the rug. For once, I want everyone to hear it. For once, I want the truth to be acknowledged. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. This time, it felt like the silence of people who were finally listening. You turned what should have been a celebration into a battlefield, I said, looking directly at my mother. You made it about everything except the beautiful life my sister is creating. You made it about your need to feel superior instead of focusing on love and support. I turned to address the entire room. How many of you have laughed at my expense over the years? How many of you have participated in making me feel like I didn't belong in my own family? How many of you have stayed silent while I was torn down? The shame in the room was palpable. Several people couldn't meet my eyes, but that's okay, I said, surprising even myself with the compassion in my voice. Because today, I'm choosing to forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free of the anger I've been carrying. I looked at my sister, who was now openly crying, her hand protectively over her baby bump. I hope your child grows up knowing love that doesn't break them. Love that celebrates their uniqueness instead of comparing them to others. Love that builds them up instead of tearing them down. Turning back to my mother, I said the words that would change everything. I'm not asking for your apology. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm telling you that I'm free now. Free from your words. Free from your expectations. Free from the need to prove myself to you or anyone else. My mother finally found her voice, but it was shaky, uncertain. This is supposed to be a celebration, not your stage for melodrama. No, Mom, I said, my voice steady and strong. This is supposed to be a family, but you turned it into a competition, a performance, a place where cruelty was disguised as love. I'm done playing. The words hit like thunder, and I watched as the last vestiges of my mother's composure crumbled. She slammed her glass down on the table, her hands trembling with rage and something else, fear perhaps. Fear of losing the control she'd held over me for so long. Daniel kissed the side of my head, his quiet support amplifying my strength. The silence that followed was unlike any before. It wasn't just awkward. It was final. The kind of silence that comes when something toxic finally dies. As we prepared to leave, I looked around the room one last time. These were the same faces I'd grown up with, the same people who had watched me struggle and said nothing. But they were also witnesses to my transformation, to the moment I'd finally found my voice. Thank you all for coming, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent room. Thank you for being here to witness the day I stopped being afraid. Daniel and I walked toward the door together, the bouquet of flowers still bright against the dullness of the room. As we stepped outside, the cool air hit my skin like a baptism, a cleansing of years of silence. Daniel whispered, "You didn't just survive in there, you won." And for the first time in years, I smiled, not the polite smile I wore to keep peace, but a real one. The kind that comes from finally choosing yourself. While I knew my mother's words might still sting in quiet moments, they would never define me again, because the truth wasn't in her cruelty. It was in the fact that despite everything, I had risen, I had spoken, and I had walked away. Not broken, but whole. This wasn't just a baby shower. It was the day I reclaimed my voice, and I was never going back.